The 2026 hurricane season has been off to a slow start, but if you think that's going to continue throughout the rest of the summer, you'd be dead wrong. Most people have been hearing this term Super El Nino and they think it's canceling hurricane season, and that couldn't be further from the truth. El Nino is going to do a few things to this hurricane season, and we're going to dive into why I think it's going to pick up soon and what El Nino means for a hurricane season. So if you want to find out what that means, stick around. So first, we're going to take a look at the satellite imagery for the Atlantic and the Caribbean islands, as well as the Gulf of Mexico. And you can see right now that we don't really have too much activity going on. Some scattered thunderstorms in the central Atlantic, and not really a lot of storms. And this is the area I'm going to highlight right here. This area right here, into the Caribbean. You see, there's not really a lot of thunderstorms or activities, so there's not really a chance for any thunderstorms to get organized and become a tropical depression or storm. And the reason that is because of this thing called wind shear. So basically, what wind shear does is when a tropical depression is starting to form, it's organized thunderstorms. They start to spin up, and then it's kind of like a tall stack of like thunderstorms on top of each other. And what this wind shear does is it's very high up into the air, and it kind of blows the top layer off, and then that really doesn't give enough strength to the storm to continue to move and form into a tropical storm, hurricane, or major hurricane. And what you're seeing here is the wind shear, and all these purples and pinks and reds that's where the wind shear is. So I put this in motion. I want you to again keep your eye focused on the Caribbean right there, and just look at how as I put this in motion, nothing really changes for that area. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to loop this, and then I'm going to hit play, and just watch this. You see as the time moves on, each of these is 6-hour increments, and it's going to go on for the next 14 days. That wind shear that is sitting in the Caribbean stays there and does not really move. And you can see there's even a little bit of wind shear coming from the east off of Africa and then moving west, which might even affect those storms coming off of Africa that are moving into the MDR, which is the main development region in that whole Atlantic Ocean. That's where typically storms develop, which is why we've been off to a slow start. And typically, well, not really a slow start, but an average start. And I do think that this will be a little bit of a below average season just because of this wind shear. But what I want to highlight for you guys is look at the Gulf of Mexico. Do you see any of those purples or pinks there? Not really. If they are, they're pretty much moving right out. This is literally like a ticking bomb. I'm going to show you the next slide here is we're going to look at the sea surface temperatures, and this is in Celsius, so I'm going to tell you what it means in Fahrenheit. 30 degrees Fahrenheit means 84 or 86 degrees Fahrenheit. 31 degrees Celsius means 88 degrees Fahrenheit. 29 degrees Celsius means 84 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can see how hot the Gulf of Mexico is, guys. And a lot of these storms are struggling to come from Africa and move across the Atlantic Ocean to the Caribbean, and they get broken apart into the Caribbean. But I'm telling you, if one of these storms can get into the Gulf of Mexico with little wind shear, it is going to rapidly intensify, and we will have our first hurricane. I do think that's how we're going to get our first hurricane to develop this season, and I do think that will happen sometime in the next month or so, into July, as it is July 1st. The end of mid-July and the end of July is when hurricane season starts to pick up. So, like I said, guys, as soon as a storm gets in there, it's going to rapidly intensify. So, do not think that hurricane season is canceled. If you live anywhere along the Gulf Coast or even the East Coast, keep your eyes peeled because it is not over. It is going to pick up, and I promise you, when it does, we could be dealing with a strong storm if it does get into the Gulf of Mexico. The last thing I want to take a look at is the number of storms per date on average. So you can see on June 20th, named storms, the average is 1. July 17th is 2. August 3rd is 3, so on and so on. On July 1st here, the average is about probably 1 to 1.5 on average, which means you're either going to have 1 or 2 named storms. And we already had our named storm back like a week ago that moved to the Gulf and kind of developed on land. That was kind of crazy. But we're right on average. A lot of people think that this hurricane season is very slow because of El Nino, but that is not the truth. People stretch the truth online, and that's just not really the case. We're pretty much exactly on average, and you can see how much it picks up as we move into the end of July, August, and then September and October. September is the biggest month typically for hurricanes in the Atlantic, And the last thing I want to take a look at is the 7-day forecast. You can see there is no tropical cyclone activity expected next 7 days. So if you are in the Gulf, like I said, keep your eyes on this. It can change very quickly. Just because it says no development in the next 7 days, that tomorrow is a new set of 7 days, so it could easily change. And like I said, if a storm can get past that wind shear and get organized into the Gulf of Mexico, it will develop, and it will develop very quickly and catch a lot of people off guard. So other than that, guys, I'll see you next time. Bye.